Okay, folks, let's talk about the Rings of Power. Let's talk about how woke it is. Let's talk about how all this diversity is so forced. Let's talk about all the things that are totally wrong with this film, and then, you know what? It's actually not a bad show. I mean, I have no freaking idea what it is that people are just punching themselves in the nuts over. This is not a terrible show. It's not a great show. I won't give it like 5 stars. But at the very least, once you get about an episode in, you're not going to be terribly bored. You might have some scenes that stretch on a little longer than they need to, and that can be a common problem with various TV shows, is they think that they're holding on to a particular scene to have more dramatic effect. And sometimes you're just sitting there saying, I know what's going to happen. Will you just please get to it already? That's really the only bad thing that I can say about the Rings of Power so far, is that it's got a bunch of scenes where you think, oh, can you please just get to the point? I know what the next step in the plot is going to be. But that's not anything to do with the complaints that you're seeing on the right-wing media side. You've got all these people saying that it's full of wokeness, it's full of SJW nonsense, and I'm looking at this as just a show that is taking Tolkien material and turning it into something that might be entertaining to a bunch of people, and, that's it. That's all you got there. I have a feeling that the overwhelming majority of people complaining about the Rings of Power fall into 2 categories. Number one, it's going to be the people who don't even care what's actually in the show. They just are desperate to show that Hollywood cannot make anything good anymore. They want you to believe, sight unseen even, that anything Hollywood produces from now on is going to be woke garbage. Doesn't even matter what is actually in it. They want you to believe that Hollywood can do nothing right. That's one component. The other component, who may have a more legitimate complaint, so to speak, are the people who are actual Tolkien fans. I myself, I've never really liked Tolkien's work. I read The Hobbit. I enjoyed that. I read it a second time because I was forced to in middle school, Middle Earth. And I tried reading Fellowship of the Ring. I got bored. I watched the Peter Jackson movies. I thought those were enjoyable. I didn't think they were the highest of high art, but they were definitely enjoyable. The Hobbit trilogy, less so. And I've never read any of the Tolkien backstory or anything like that, so like the Silmarillion. So I don't come to this with any preconceived notions of what is supposed to happen in this series. I have a feeling that there are a lot of people out there who are just Tolkien scholars, whether of the lay or the, for all I know, they actually give degrees in this. I wouldn't be surprised. And they're thinking, oh, well, Galadriel, she's never acted like that. That's not her past. Elrond, why are they portraying Elrond like this when in the books it's always said he's like this? It's like, look, if you have been watching the Marvel movies, then you know darn well that those movies have not been translated one-to-one with the actual comic source material. They can't be in a lot of cases, because some of those source materials are just so dated, and some of them are just plain awful, to the point where you would not want Marvel to translate one-to-one. You want them to take these properties and make them into something entertaining, as opposed to something that actually fit exactly what the old comic books had. So just think that is exactly the same thing that's happening in this case with the Rings of Power. No, they're not going one-to-one with everything that Tolkien wrote, because that would suck. That would not be something that most people want to see on the screen. They want to see something entertaining on the screen, and that's not going to be the original material. I mean, it didn't work out that... I remember reading Return of the King. Well, I read like the scene in Return of the King where you have some climactic events happen, and I wanted to see if the way that Tolkien had written it had anything to, corresponded well with what I saw on the screen from the movies. And it didn't. And you know what? The movies actually did it better. So let's not pretend that this kind of material that Tolkien worked on is just absolute gospel that needs to be one-to-one transmitted to the screen. You're going to have divergences that are going to make it more entertaining and tie it together into some reasonable kind of threaded storyline. You've got like 4 storylines going at once, and I don't want to try to explain any of it to you because I'm not going to do it justice. But I will say that you won't be seeing like any kinds of woke themes throughout this show. You're not seeing any, unless they pop up later, there's always the chance that that could pop up later, but you're not seeing SJW crap. You're not seeing, the only thing that you might be seeing that might be tripping your trigger is an overabundance of female characters who are in more of leading roles. But you know what? So what? That's not anything to get your underwear in a twist over. It's just, why even complain about that unless you find it boring? Hey, if you watch The Rings of Power and you find it boring, and like I said, there are slow scenes where you just wish they would get the thing underway, so I understand that. But if you find the show boring and you've actually watched it, I have no problem with your judgment in that case. In my opinion, it's something that I find mildly entertaining. It's got some good scenes. It's got some predictable scenes. It drags a little in some places. In some places, it's pretty darn heartwarming. So I would say give it a shot. If you like it, great. If you don't, throw it away and watch something else. But don't go online, first of all, never having seen it and just desperate to convince everybody that it's bad just because Hollywood is doing it. That doesn't help anybody, and it's not true either. And also, don't go out of your way if you're a Tolkien fan to criticize it just because it doesn't fit everything J.R.R. Tolkien may have ever said. Because you know what? The overwhelming amount of people in the world don't care what Tolkien wrote. At all. At all. And they don't care whether it's going to be in sync with all of the lore, with the Silmarillion, with all the other crap that he probably wrote before that. Very few people care. They just want to watch a good show. And is The Rings of Power a good show? I would give it a 3.5 out of 5. All right? It's not great. It's not crap. It's somewhere in the middle. Just watch it for yourself. See if you enjoy it. Stay with it as long as you want. And then move on to the next thing. And just make sure you watch this stuff before you start complaining. Because you never know what kind of gem is going to appear in the middle of all this stuff that you've been told is crap. You really can't trust the pre-reviewers, the ones who are coming with their own agenda to the material and saying, this can't be any good because the people in Hollywood aren't any good. Well, you know what? There are bad people. There are people whose political views I find absolutely horrible who are capable of cranking out absolute gems. And you know what? I don't mind that in the least. I don't experience cognitive dissonance from that. I don't need good people to produce good material because I know that the world is a more complex place than that. I hope you do too. I'm Mike Partika. Thanks for watching. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, and I will talk to you later.